Once you are familiar with SPSS, I encourage you to try writing your syntax by hand because it is often quicker to write your syntax by hand and it's a little bit more intuitive. This is easier than it sounds because SPSS often understands abbreviated syntax. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say we want to make a frequency distribution for the variable zodiac. We could go to the Analyze menu, go down to Descriptive Statistics, and go to Frequencies. And we could go to the variable zodiac and place it in the variable box. We had previously made a frequency distribution for the variable race, but we don't need to do that anymore, so let's take it out by using that arrow and placing it back into the variable list. So if we wanted to make a frequency distribution for the variable zodiac, we would go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, click on Frequencies, place zodiac in the variable box, and then paste our syntax. And it would pop up in our statistics syntax editor for SPSS. And we might give ourselves a little note. Run a frequency distribution for the variable zodiac. Make sure you end that with a period. And this would be what the syntax looks like if we use our drop-down menus. We're telling SPSS the command, we want to make a frequency distribution. The variable that we're going to use is zodiac. And there's some extra stuff here that's not really clear what it means to us right now. And if we were to run this syntax, we can highlight it like that and run the syntax. Then it would produce our frequency distribution. So we can see how many respondents have each of the astrological signs. So I'm a Virgo, you can go down and look at Virgo, okay, 393 people in this data set are Virgos, and it's 9% of the data set. Somebody once told me Virgo was the most common astrological sign, and it looks like that is true. Okay, let's go back to our syntax editor. So if you go down and you hover over this, you can see your three windows, and we're going to click on syntax. If you wanted to write your syntax by hand, it's very, very simple. You write freq, F-R-E-Q, and then the variable that you want a frequency distribution of, zodiac. And then you put a period at the end. We put a period at the end of every command for SPSS because it tells SPSS that that's the end of that command. So we can highlight freq zodiac and run that, and you can see another frequency distribution popped up. So now we have two frequency distributions for the same variable, and you can see how it's very, very simple to get a frequency distribution by using this abbreviated handwritten syntax. If you go back and look, you can see it's much easier to produce this. It's much quicker. You can type it very quickly, and it's shorter than this piece of syntax up above it. Let's try another example. Let's say we want to have frequency distributions for a few different variables. SPSS allows us to make frequency distributions for multiple variables, and we only have to use one line of syntax. So we put freq, and let's say we want to do a capital punishment variable. We want to do a variable for marijuana, it's grass, and how often people have sex, sex freak. Okay, so what you can do is you can use one line of syntax to get three frequency distributions for three different variables. You just line them up No punctuation between the variables, just spaces. Make sure you put a period at the end. You can highlight this syntax and run it. And what you can see is the first box that SPSS produces in the output window are general statistics about the valid number of cases for each of the 3 variables. Kappa is whether or not people favor or oppose the death penalty for murder cases. The variable grass is whether or not you believe marijuana should be made legal. And sex freak is the frequency of sex during the last year. So all of those statistics are placed in one box, and then each of the frequency distributions you can see are one after the other. So this one here is the capital punishment. Should marijuana be made legal? And then the last one is an ordinal measure of how often people had sex in the last year. So you can answer questions like, what % of respondents approve of capital punishment? So you can go up to the capital punishment variable, and you can see there's favor and there's oppose, and we're looking at the valid %, remember? And so 67% of respondents favor or approve of capital punishment. What about what percentage of respondents think marijuana should be made legal? We can go down here, we can look at our valid % column, and that first row is legal, and we can see it's 36.8%. And then finally, let's say I asked you, what % of respondents say that they have sex 4 or more times a week? You can look at the categories, and that is this last one down here, 4+ times per week, and it's 5.7% of respondents. I encourage you to try using abbreviated handwritten syntax. You will find that it's a lot faster and pretty intuitive.